The night had started like any other, with soft lights glowing across the grand hall and laughter echoing faintly among the crowd. Shen Yue had arrived quietly, her smile delicate, her dress glistening under the golden chandeliers. To everyone watching, she seemed calm, radiant, untouchable. But behind her careful smile, the air was already thick with tension, a storm waiting to break. Dylan Wang stood a few steps away, his posture straight, his eyes dark with emotions he could no longer contain. Bailu sat quietly at the edge of the table, her fingers curled tightly around her glass, as if holding it was the only way to steady herself. And Xiao Zhan, caught in the middle of a silence no one dared to disturb, leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Dylan as though he already sensed what was coming. Then it happened. Dylan spoke. His voice wasn't loud, yet the weight of his words struck the room like a thunderclap. "Shen Yue, I cannot keep this inside any longer. You were always the one I tried to forget, but you are also the one I could never let go of." The silence that followed was unbearable. Shen Yue froze, her chest rising and falling as if her breath had been stolen away. Every eye in the room turned to her, but her gaze was fixed only on him, on Dylan, the man whose words had both healed and shattered her so many times before. Bailu's lips parted slightly, her glass trembling in her hand, the color draining from her face as she processed every syllable. Xiao Zhan leaned forward now, his fingers clasped tightly together, but even he could not speak. Dylan's confession had pinned him to silence, leaving him powerless to break the storm that was swelling. Shen Yue's hands began to shake. Her eyes glistened, her body trembling with the force of emotions she had hidden for so long. For a fleeting moment, everyone thought she might answer him, that she might speak the words that could either mend or destroy the fragile thread between them. But instead, she turned away. Her heels echoed sharply against the polished floor as she walked out, each step a painful rhythm that silenced the entire hall. By the time she reached the door, tears had already begun to spill down her cheeks, glistening under the golden lights like shattered pieces of her heart. The room remained frozen. Bailu pressed her lips together, as if swallowing back 1,000 words she wanted to scream. Her eyes followed Shen Yue's retreating figure, but deep down, she was staring at Dylan too, with a look that carried both anger and heartbreak. Xiao Zhan, however, did not move. His face was unreadable, but his eyes told the truth. He was shaken, caught between sympathy for Shen Yue and shock at Dylan's brutal honesty. Minutes passed like hours, the silence unbearable. Dylan stood unmoving, his chest heaving, but his face betrayed no regret. He had spoken what was buried inside him for years, and even though it tore Shen Yue apart, he could no longer hide it. When Xiao Zhan finally rose to his feet, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor echoed like a warning. He walked slowly toward Dylan, his voice low yet cutting through the heavy air. "Do you even realize what you've done tonight? You did not just break her heart. You reminded her of every moment she ever tried to leave behind." Dylan's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with unspoken words, but he said nothing. Bailu's voice broke the silence next, soft yet trembling with pain. "Sometimes the truth doesn't set us free. Sometimes it chains us even tighter." The hall fell into silence again. The chandeliers continued to glitter, the music long forgotten, the laughter gone. What remained was the echo of Dylan's confession, Shen Yue's tears, and the stunned stillness of two stars who had no idea how the night had turned into the beginning of something none of them could control. Outside, the night stretched endlessly, the wind carrying whispers that fans would never forget. Shen Yue had walked away, but the memory of that moment, of Dylan's words, of Bailu's frozen stare, and Xiao Zhan's haunted silence, would linger forever. And though the night ended in silence, the story had only just begun. Because Dylan's confession was not just a declaration of love. It was a spark, and the fire it ignited would change everything for all of them. The silence after Shen Yue walked out was heavier than the chandeliers above the room. The echo of her footsteps lingered like a haunting melody that refused to fade. Dylan Wang remained frozen in his spot, his lips parted as if he wanted to call out her name, but no sound dared to escape. It was as though the weight of his own words had bound him in chains. Bailu gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles pale as her wine glass trembled in her hand. She had witnessed countless moments of tension on set and behind closed doors, but nothing had ever struck her like this. Her eyes darted from Dylan to the doorway, where Shen Yue had disappeared, then to Xiao Zhan, whose expression was unreadable, his stillness more terrifying than any outburst. Xiao Zhan's gaze was fixed on Dylan. His silence screamed louder than words. Every fan watching the leaked clip later said the same thing, that his eyes looked like they carried the burden of secrets too heavy for anyone else to bear. For a man who is known for grace and composure, his frozen state revealed just how devastating Dylan's words had been. And Dylan's words replayed over and over in everyone's minds. A confession, a truth, or maybe even a mistake, spoken with the raw force of emotion. Fans whispered that he had chosen that moment, in front of everyone, to reveal feelings he had buried for years. Others claimed it was never meant for the world to hear, that the words slipped past his lips only because Shen Yue's presence had pushed him beyond control. But for Shen Yue, those words were not a revelation. They were a wound, reopened in front of the very people she least wanted to see her pain. She had fought for years to leave behind whispers of the past, to rebuild herself stronger, brighter, untouchable. Yet here she was, walking out of a room filled with cameras, colleagues, and rivals, her tears shining under the light like proof of a story she never wanted told again. As she vanished beyond the grand doors, the atmosphere inside shifted dangerously. Bailu's voice finally cut through the tension. "Do you even realize what you've done, Dylan?" Her words shook, not with anger, but with something closer to fear. Fear that this single night would unravel everything they had all built. Dylan turned to her, his face pale yet defiant. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I planned for her to hear it like this?" His voice cracked, betraying the turmoil boiling beneath. Xiao Zhan finally moved, his chair scraping softly against the floor as he stood. His presence alone silenced everyone. He stepped closer to Dylan, his height casting a shadow over the table. "Whether you planned it or not," he said slowly, every word sharp and deliberate, "you broke something tonight that cannot be repaired with excuses." The room fell into a suffocating quiet once again. Even the servers standing in the corner dared not move, their eyes wide as they exchanged nervous glances. Every camera lens caught the moment, every flash immortalizing the chaos that unfolded at that single table. Fans watching from afar erupted online, dissecting every detail, every glance, every pause. Some defended Dylan, saying his truth was long overdue. Others stood by Shen Yue, furious that she had been blindsided, her dignity crumbling before millions. A third wave turned their focus to Bailu and Xiao Zhan, questioning what they knew and whether their reactions were signs of deeper truths hidden from the public for far too long. And then came the whispers about Wang Yiba, who, though not present in the room, was rumored to have known parts of this story all along. A fan caught him later that night stepping into his car, the cameras flashing as someone asked directly about Shen Yue's tears. His lips pressed together, his silence loud enough to fuel weeks of speculation. Meanwhile, Shen Yue herself remained hidden, no statement, no post, no glimpse of her since the walkout. That silence became more powerful than any explanation, leaving the world desperate for answers. Would she forgive Dylan? Would she confront him? Or would she simply erase him from her story forever? By the end of the night, one thing was undeniable. This was no longer just about a confession or a slip of words. This was about history, loyalty, heartbreak, and choices that would echo far beyond that room. A single walkout had become the turning point in a story that fans around the world had waited years to see unfold. And as dawn broke, Dylan sat alone, staring at the empty chair Shen Yue had left behind. His hand brushed against the table, as though he could still feel the ghost of her presence, the warmth of a connection he feared he had lost forever.